Hello and welcome to the CGMA workshop. Story is in the Telling with Stephen McLeod. I'm Stephen McLeod, and I'm excited to do this workshop. I've been doing the master class, and it's been a great learning experience. Now, for the workshop, I've kind of wanted to cover something that I don't cover in the class. Well, some of the stuff I do cover in the class, but I put it in a different context. So when I put together this workshop, I really wanted to focus on how you tell your story and what you might go through as you plan for that. Because obviously there's story, and then I don't know why, but in my head I always separate it like story and storytelling. Story I tend to think of more as the content itself, and I think people can create very, very, very strong stories, just pure content, just what characters are involved, where it takes place, and what happens with the characters. And the telling of the story is really the execution of it. How certain people are extremely good at storytelling, and I think it makes up the difference for weak stories. And I think vice versa. Sometimes bad storytelling can ruin a really good story. So in any case, I'm going to kind of go over some stuff. This was just a way to organize my thoughts. This isn't by any means all, how do you call it, all inclusive, all encompassing. I'm not covering, this isn't exhaustive and this isn't concrete. This is just a way for me to cover these topics and express some of my thoughts and views on how you can approach your scene. So in any case, I kind of broke it down with 3 steps in creating your scene. The first being inspiration, number 2 is preparation, and last is execution. Now mind you, inspiration and preparation are pretty closely related, but I separated inspiration as kind of a way of how you find your idea, and then preparation is how you prepare that idea once you've found it. And then execution is how I'm going to mostly do a demonstration for that part. So inspiration is first. Finding ideas. I kind of wanted you guys to be self-sufficient. To me, it's very important as a story artist to be self-sufficient with your stories. And what I mean by that is you're able to kind of find your way. I was talking with a friend of mine today, actually. We were talking about survival, what is it? Story survival skills. Like if you were going to go out for a camping trip, for a whole week, you might prepare a certain amount of, as an amateur camper, maybe you prepare way too much. You bring way too much with you, and maybe you need all that stuff to survive. But someone who's a professional camper, or experienced camper, I should say, they pack pretty light, and you know exactly what you need. But then you also leave. You trust that you're going to be able to live off of the land a little bit. You'll be able to make fire, maybe find water and find food. And I think it's the same with story. So when you have when you face story problems at work, you should be able to rely on yourself and rely on what's going to happen in the room to be able to find things. But I think first is one of your major fonts that you're going to be digging from is your own personal life, and maybe the life of those immediately around you. And you can find a lot of these things and make notes of it. You don't have to rely on your memory all the time. It's a great, great, great habit, and I'm sure you would be told this by any professor in an art school and a lot of teachers at even high school and elementary or whatever, I don't know. But you'll be told to keep a sketchbook, maybe keep a journal, maybe dig through your past, go through your old photos, try to remember your life and all the experiences you've had. And even talking to people, talking to your grandparents or talking to friends that you spend a lot of time with, talking about life in general. I think life is full of experiences and teaching moments in your life where you learn things and you learn the importance of certain things. And one of the big reasons I tell you to go to life is I think your ideas just by default will have a uniqueness, and they'll come across as original because of that. and they'll be fresh. Now, that's not to say that people don't experience the same things. Sometimes, I don't know anybody who hasn't had a crush in their life or in their youth, and but I think because we're all individuals and we all live in specific places and we're all raised in different places, we do have a unique outlook. And I think if we were all to tell a story about a crush or a story about someone we lost in our life, they would all come across very differently. So keep that in mind. Also, drawing from your own life, and like I said, everybody sometimes has similar experiences, and I think when you pick certain experiences, the relatability is a lot higher. That factor, people can relate to your stories. Keep that in mind, that when you tell your ideas, that people can relate to them. And also something that I'm sure you've noticed with interviews with filmmakers or story people or whatever, any artists in general, painters of the past, in order to stay motivated and finish a project and keep your steam while you're doing a project, things that are personal tend to keep you more motivated to finish, I think. Now, I don't know. You'll have to see for yourself if that's true for you as well. But for me, when it is a personal story, I'm constantly motivated by it, and I want to get it. I want to express myself as best as possible. So the other part of finding ideas is not just about you, but it's also I put consuming. Consuming media, consuming all types of different things, allowing yourself basically to be inspired by those around you, by other artists, other filmmakers, other storytellers, children's books, comic books, old paintings, new paintings, anything you can think of, illustration, editorial, syndicate cartoons, whatever you got to do. Be inspired, and I surround myself. There's a lot of sites dedicated nowadays, blogs and websites, Tumblrs that are dedicated to showcasing the work of other people that keep getting discovered. I mean, there's constantly another artist that's well, to be frank, better than you, and trying to attain to some of their qualities is not a bad thing. Someone was telling me once, I'm sure you guys have heard it too, good in, good out, garbage in, garbage out. Surrounding yourself with good things can only, you can't help but be infected by it and influenced by it. And some people might think that's a bad thing. You should be original and you don't want to be a copycat. But I think in many, many ways, since we are interacting with people in our lives, it's impossible to not be impacted by certain things. And everything in our life is designed, all these products or whatever. So also to go along with that, keep in mind like-minded individuals. You might, if you're trying to attain to a certain style or a certain approach, surround yourself with those types of things. I personally would like to learn more about painting and learn more about graphic design, so I surround myself with those types of things and try to really immerse myself. When I wanted to do comic books, and I still want to do comic books, but when I want to get into that frame of mind, I surround myself with that type of thing. Next, I think is a hard part for a lot of us. It's about looking inside of yourself and really being self-evaluating and honest with yourself. Where do you stand? And I think it's not necessarily always a negative thing. It's not about, I can't draw as good as this person or this person. But it's also finding out what you have to offer. What is it that's missing out there? And, what's cool is you take inventory of what you like and you find your taste. And then you find your own voice. You try to find, what do I like? Maybe that's what my voice is, and then you see what's missing. No one's talking about this, or there's so much to be said about this, and no one's really covering that. That's where you come in, and that's really where you find your importance and how you can fit into everything. That is what you have to offer. So, finding your corner on the market and finding what you can offer to the industry and offer to a story crew or offer to the art world and at large. The next part is corralling ideas. Now, once you've got all these ideas, I think There's a lot of different approaches. Some people are very analytical. Um, I tend to think you should kind of go from your gut first. Now this is just my opinion. You can go either way, but I tend to like going from the gut and then analyzing. So coming from the gut, um, just be unbridled, unrestrained, and rely on your instinct. Now basically what I'm saying is, like we've said before just now, we're drawing from our own life, and now that you've got it from your own life, you're going to use your voice. Now you got to trust your voice. This is very difficult because your voice sometimes is very meek or very timid. Sometimes people are shy, but the best thing you can do for yourself is just go ahead and be unrestrained. Unbridled means you let loose. You know, you don't restrain yourself. Don't limit yourself. Just kind of go and trust your instinct and just let out all the things you need to do. This is where your voice is really going to be found, and I think what you discover, you got to really cherish it and nurture it. Don't suffocate. Don't try to hide it. You know, and don't underestimate it, because a lot of times it is right, for what you need to do. And let's say you're trying to do a scene where um, the execution can go one way or another. Well, you should trust your gut. Sometimes your gut tells you, your instinct is telling you, I should show this or show that. I need to deliver it in such a way. And sometimes it's different for other people, and they might disagree with you. But I think you got to trust that it's coming from somewhere. Now, mind you, once you do analyze it and you find maybe some disagreement, or if the director that you're working for or whoever you're working for disagrees with that approach, then go ahead and change it, because that's your job. But overall, when you're doing your personal work, don't overly second guess. I mean, second guessing is very important. We'll get to that later. But the next part, and again, I put this under corralling because I really want you, once you see it and you start seeing it in front of you, whether it be in words or in visuals, you have to assess how much of an investment it's going to be to execute this story. Now, mind you, I'm more thinking of maybe short films or doing sequences for a portfolio. Um, you know, you only have so much time in a day, and you only have so much time to make a certain number of scenes to put into a portfolio. Sometimes you even, as you're handed a scene in the workplace, you only have a certain amount of time, and you have deadlines. So you need to assess the investment. Assess how long it's going to take. How much are you trying to do? Is it too much or what? What's the feasibility of the end product in your mind? If it's some crazy epic thing, then you got to find an economical way of getting it done in the amount of time allotted. So you make the big decisions. Now this is just advice. You know, you don't. You make the big decision on the big idea. So picture the big idea of your scene, whether that be a chariot race, whether that be two characters in a room arguing, whether it be a fist fight in an alley. The big idea is, you know, this guy comes in, there's a fight that ensues, and then the character jumps away. Now you make a decision. Can I do that? Can I feasibly do that in the amount of time I have? Do I even have the tools as an artist to draw this, that, or the other? Can I make that character look invisible? Is the scene relying on being a painting that comes to life? Can I actually do that? You know, you got to make a big decision and decide whether you can actually make this thing happen or not. I tend to look at it like you cling to the big things, because those can carry the load of the story. If you're clinging to a bunch of small ideas in your idea, let's say your big idea is, you know, to have a guy pick up I want a guy pushing a grocery cart, and I want a guy picking up a product and making a joke about it. And then I also want to have a lady who doesn't like paying with credit. Those seem like really little things to me. That's not a big idea. The big idea would be more like the guy is going to the store, and every decision he makes could impact whether wife gets the right nutrients or something. I don't know. I'm just making this up. But I'm just saying that you want to cling to a big idea and let the little ideas get attached later on. But definitely find a big idea to cling to and commit to before moving forward. Don't move forward with a bunch of little things. I hope that makes sense. Although you could move forward with a bunch of little things, but I find that I get more into a pickle when I do that sort of thing, and then I have to go back and think about a big idea to organize all those little things. So it's not a bad thing to have the little things, but I think you need to have a big thing in mind at some point. So the next part is preparation. So like I said, we've found all these ideas, we've kind of narrowed down what we're after, and now we got to start clarifying it in our heads. So we start preparing. So we refine our ideas. Something that I think is important, and I think this was kind of a lost art form as far as in the older feature animation days, they used to do more beat boards and things like that, and just any imagery that's coming to your mind, any tentpole images that you really want. If there was an image of fog on a glass and someone spelling out a word, if that's something that a moment that you're really clinging to, an image that you're really clinging to, is it two characters sitting on a table looking at each other at candlelight, sitting on a table. I have 16 candles in my head. I don't know why, but is it two characters enjoying a moment or something, or is it a bad guy or a villain standing over your hero as the hero is kind of defeated or reaching for a knife to beat the villain? Is there any imagery in your head at all? Go ahead and either write those things out or draw them out or somehow put them out on paper, because this is kind of what's going to guide your sequence. And again, I guess this is everything I was just mentioning. Any doodles, thoughts, or big ideas. And these things are kind of what keep you excited and motivated. This is kind of what you're after. This is kind of what you're going to want to try to get. Now, mind you, once you put it out, maybe you just put it aside, because once you've done it, it's kind of in your head. Maybe it's just a way of solidifying it in your head. This part is this is kind of abstract, but I want you guys to think, what's the entertainment part of this? Why are we watching this? I'm not a selfish storyteller or filmmaker. I like making my material to share with people. I want other people to get something out of it. Not that there's anything wrong with making something just for yourself, but I tend to, you make it for yourself, but then you eventually want to share it. And this is all I'm saying, is the entertainment part of it. What is it that you want to share, and how do you want to share it, and why are people going to watch this? Why should they watch this? And I find that the more entertaining bits for me, the things that kind of make it unique to that storyteller, are the details and the specifics, the unique, fresh, original ideas. And again, it's from their life, or if it's your story, it's from your life. So keep that in mind. What do you hope to deliver, and how are you going to keep this alive and entertaining? So we'll get into this more when we're boarding too, because we're going to be faced with all these problems and these challenges. But just knowing ahead of time a little bit of what you're going to sprinkle in there for the entertainment bits is going to help you a long ways. And it'll help you keep moving faster. So and this is another thing, just selling points. How do you? Is it a matter of heightening your reality? Making people that, is it fantastical? Is it people that fly? Is there some fantasy element, like sci-fi element? Is there, no, it's going to be realistic, but what is the selling point? Like what is the point of view that maybe is more exciting to watch? Do you do it about an average Joe and an average day of life, contemporary setting, or do you do the same story but put it back in medieval times, just to make it a little more exciting for people that have to watch it or whatever? Exactly, something exotic, interesting, or fantastic. Another thing that some may disagree with, but I tend to be open-minded about this, is go ahead and find comparisons, do some research, find ways that people have done it in a good way and in a bad way. people that have succeeded with similar ideas or failed with similar ideas, and what caused either the success or the failure. Um, Stealing ideas, if you're doing it one for one, it's a horrible, horrible thing, and I think people will notice. And that's the thing. Most people steal from good things, and those good things are already popular and well known. So you're kind of not doing yourself any favor by stealing from them. Now, mind you, it's one of those things like if you go out and do a painting of nature, you are copying nature, but there's no way you can copy nature, and you're going to end up doing it in your own way anyways. Your DNA is all over it, and it's very difficult to steal an idea properly anyways. So just being inspired by it, seeing what works, what methods work or don't work, can help you along the way and give you some starting points. And then you finalize your ideas. I think writing is you shouldn't be afraid of it. Be very open to it. It is honestly the quickest way to work out an idea. Drawing takes time, and sometimes people struggle with drawing or drawing certain things. Writing it out is cheap. It's fast. It's malleable. You can change it in a moment, and you can even start a new paragraph and just forget about deleting the previous one and just keep writing different versions all in a row. And you can write out your thoughts. You can think out loud with it too. There's really you don't have to limit yourself to a certain format even. Just be free, be open with it. Yeah. Don't over obsess about editing. Let yourself have a stream of consciousness. And then the good part is you're watching it in your head, and you could try to pace it in your head too, and pace it in your writing, and however you would, pretend like you're pitching it, for example. You're watching it and pitching it to somebody, and you're just writing it all out. And the good thing is, once you've written it out, you can reread it and really take a good visual assessment of the content and really see what it is you're about to take on. And then you can edit. Just go back and you edit through what you wrote, and that way you can assess it over and over and over until it's a good size. It fits into the allotted screen time of the movie you're working on, or it's in the right amount of time for a commercial that you're making, or whatever it is. 32 pages or whatever the page count is of common children's books. You're keeping in mind limitations, and once you read the writing, you can kind of assess what you have ahead of you. Once before you go into executing your scene, you really got to know what you have to draw, what's ahead of you. So now this doesn't mean you have to have finalized visuals. Like, you don't have to have a final character design. In fact, your design might evolve as you're drawing it and learning how to draw the character. So be open to that. You don't have to have, I don't bring this up so that you guys can stop and get stuck in this step of designing visuals. This is meant to just give yourself maybe a page or so. And again, I'm going to show you this in the demo, what I had for myself before going into this scene that I boarded. Give yourself a simple character design of all the different characters that might show up. Some of the big locations, maybe draw some master shot, wide establishing shot of the location that you're going to interact with. That way you kind of know where things are located. And now that you've written your story, you know what parts of the set you're going to be interacting with. And then deciding what your props are, if there's any props in the scene, and maybe even finding props to interact with. Lastly, I threw this in here, and it's something that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people do, but some people really have a gift for appeal in their artwork, in their drawings. Just keep in mind, pleasing imagery makes it easier for the audience to get involved with the story. Think of nice photography or attractive movie stars. The reason they have those things in movies is because, hey, it's curb appeal. It draws people to the story and to even give it a taste. Imagine you arrive to a buffet, and some of some of the food looks appealing and some of it doesn't, which one are you going to try? You know, it's not really it's kind of matter of fact, honestly. The nicer it looks, the more people are willing to get involved with it. So appeal does make a big difference. Mind you, appeal can sometimes be strange. It doesn't need to be beautiful. It can be strange. It could be beautiful in its strangeness. It doesn't need to be Disney, you know, big eyes, smooth skin, you know, nice hairs type of thing. Sometimes it is more of an interesting look. Can be a very appealing as well. So don't think of it as attractive all the time. Sometimes it's just interesting. Also, I wanted to cover structure. This is a big one, and you know, the class that I give covers it a lot more. But just in a general sense, I want you guys to assess your tentpole images and your dialogue. So if you've written yourself a script of some sort, or even just your whatever, just whatever your straight ahead writing was, underline the big parts. Underline the parts that are going to be the most important and the most fueled and the most amped up, and really assess where those images are. And you have to land on those things with the maximum impact. So you start preparing for those things, so that you can. Now in your story, you should in some way have a beginning, middle, and end, a setup, conflict, a payoff. In other words, in your setup you get the info. In your conflict you get some change, and in your payoff you either resolve your issues, or you leave it open ended and having it propelled to the next scene. So, and again, you know, I'm sure you guys have heard the word hook. You know, you want to hook your audience in the beginning. You want to have something in the beginning or the setup that kind of draws your reader or your audience or your viewer, whoever it is that's consuming your work. Really find a way to suck them in the early stages. And something that different people are talking about these days is you know, progression or digression. Is there a ramping up or a ramping down in your scene? Are characters changing for the better, or are they changing for the worse? Are things getting more complicated? This is stuff to think about as you're preparing to do your scene. Anything you can give yourself to give yourself some direction and specificity is good. Really, all your shots should have a reason and a justification. The camera angles, what you're showing on screen. This is where you do the thinking for it before you start drawing it. Now, mind you, there is room, and we'll get into the next part, execution. But it's good to start thinking about your options. This is your options here. This is all the things that you can play with. These are all the different tools that you have at your disposal. All your cards that you can play. Something that I cling to maybe too much, but I know that there's been some. I don't think it's a bad thing. Bookends. These can be visual, or they can be spoken words. You know, dialogue. It's a way to kind of structure your scene or your film, whatever you're doing, to kind of help structure it and help it feel like you're opening up a problem and then you're closing a problem. And I think bookends are good for letting people know the story has concluded, or it's come full circle, or it's addressed itself, or it hasn't. You know, if a character, let's say there's a dark house, or how you're at the street looking at a house and there's no lights on, and then one of the lights comes on and you start your scene. Something happens inside the house, regardless of what it is. Someone gets killed, or a couple have a very important discussion inside, or the father comes out to help a baby and there's some really comedic scene that takes place, and things get from bad to worse, or they get better. Maybe you come out and the character comes out of a room, turns the light on, and he's really worried about something, but then he finds reassurance. And then at the very end, you go back to that first shot from the street of the house, and you turn the light off. Now that's just an example I just made up, but it's a bookend. It's something to give your scene a structure. So again, there's a lot of different ways that maybe aren't even listed here to structure your sequence. That's just a few that I think could wrap our heads around. And then tying up loose ends. finish whatever you start. The only story problems that you have or that you will have in your story are the ones that you give yourself. So if you bring up some detail in the background, you got to tie that up. You should justify it, or people are going to linger and think about whatever it is that you brought up. So think about whatever things you've started. And I had a habit of doing this early on when I was creating stories and stuff, that I'd kind of straight ahead, kind of go straight forward without looking back. And then once I'd finished, I go back to the beginning and realize that I didn't tie up all my loose ends by the end. So then you go back and you kind of tie it all up. You try to take out stuff that you set up that you never paid off, or set up things that you pay off that you never set up, which it happens more than you think. Okay, that brings us to execution. Now I'm going to go over more of this in the demonstration, but this is just to cover it in the list way, so you guys can kind of see an overall of what's going to take place. First is thumbnails. Not everybody does this step. They work it out in their roughs, which is very similar. I mean, a thumbnail is just a small rough, and a rough is just a big thumbnail. They're kind of synonymous with each other, but thumbnails typically are something much smaller. They're good for working out compositional or value studies. And what's cool is you can give more emphasis. I don't know why, but when you're working small, you tend to be able to make characters smaller in the screen. You're less apprehensive about whether you can read their expressions or not, because they're already super small, so you're not really worried about that. You're worried more about shapes and graphics and things like that. You can also see your overall shot selection, your shot flow, some of the cutting that you're going to do. You can rearrange shots, you can repeat shots, and it's much easier to draw when they're only like postage stamp size, real small. This is something that you could think about earlier. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do it in thumbnails, and you can also do it out in roughs, bigger. But blocking characters, blocking your actors in your scene, or blocking out objects in a room, some of the activities that they're going to do. I wrote subtext here because sometimes a character looms over another character, and it has a certain subtext to it. It's a little more threatening, or a little more submissive, or sometimes an activity like the wife is talking about something, and she's chopping up vegetables, and maybe that chopping symbolizes something or signifies something or alerts something to the other character. So there's subtext in the activity, and there's any number, a billion different ways you can get subtext into the activities and the actual blocking of the characters in the scene. I'm thinking of the scene Remains of the Day, where Emma Thompson has kind of entered into the quarters of Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is kind of the main butler in this giant estate, and Emma Thompson is the main maid in the estate, and she's kind of come into his space, and she's kind of asking too many questions to Anthony Hopkins, and he's feeling suffocated. But they did it visually as well. They have a certain amount of light in the room, and then she starts closing in on his space and really blocking him into a corner until he's literally pushed against a wall and trapped. Now, mind you, I don't know if they described it in the script, but it might have been worked out in the room with the actors, blocking out their activities and what they're going to be doing in that room, rather than just spouting out dialogue. They have to have something to do. Circle around, put this here, this person's relaxing, and then this person has to stand up, the other character's standing up and coming closer and closer and closer until he's backed against a wall. So working out that thing, those kinds of things in thumbnails is good too. Another thing to keep in mind is, and this impacts the scene so tremendously, maybe you work it out in your preparation, but figuring out whose point of view the scene is from. If you keep it a general point of view, it's less engaging for the audience. It's much more engaging when you have it from a person's point of view, and sometimes that's a matter of just showing both their eyes, showing them from front on axis, how they say, or literally showing them looking at their hands, or where they're walking, or who they see around the corner, or what they're seeing. So literally cutting to their point of view, or just showing things as they might be from their point of view, like over the character's shoulder or whatever. And if you just reassess what your scene is from a certain character's point of view, it could change the whole sequence and really help it succeed. So roughs is the next step in execution, and this is where you live. And what I mean by that is this is where you're going to spend most of your time. Typically, especially in a professional setting, you're constantly fixing things, and you never find time to clean things up sometimes under certain deadlines. So this is really where you're going to spend a lot of time. This is really where you're going to find the proof of your concept. After you've done all that execution, all that preparation and everything, and you've even thumbnailed it and explored some of the visuals more specifically, this is really where you're going to find more of your proof of concept, whether it's really working or not. And then you fix it and you adjust it and you fix it until it's working. And then you really want that proof of concept solidified. Once you've been approved either by yourself or by a director or head of story or whoever you're working for, you start to clean it up. You start refining the idea. You start coloring it or shading it. Mind you, coloring, I only do spot colors if the scene demands it. And you in between, which means you add more panels to it. You maybe add more panels to the acting or the movements so that they read better. And you're basically trying to strengthen everything, the delivery of the timing of the images, of the pitch, your expressions and the acting, and really to make each image clear. Sometimes you have a billion lines in your rough drawing, and then you want to decide on one of the lines. You really refine it and clean it up. Now mind you, some people get really stuck in this and it's a vicious cycle, and you got to watch out for it. This guy Jeff Snow, who was my mentor at DreamWorks when I first started there, he was talking about cleanup-itis, and you just almost like it's an OCD compulsive thing, don't overdraw your cleanups. Something that you'll have to keep in mind is that if you overdraw and over clean up something, you kind of want to maintain a consistency in the drawings and the level of polish for the whole scene. So if you're really polishing one of your drawings, then you got to allow yourself enough time to do that to all of them. That's kind of the way I look at it, and I know a lot of people look at it. All the drawings in the scene should be treated in the same way. It makes it less jarring when there's a rough that's still in there or a thumbnail that's still in there that never got cleaned up because you ran out of time. And lastly, pitching. This isn't lastly because honestly it should happen a lot during your rough stage or even your thumbnail stage and your cleanup stage. But in general, pitching should be practiced out loud and in real time. And I strongly suggest you pitch it to somebody. I find that showing it to a fresh eye allows you to look at it with a fresh eye and really live up to whether it's sinking or swimming. See whether it's still afloat. Because I think sometimes we think it's funny and then we show it to somebody and they don't laugh. It's kind of a good indicator of whether it's funny or not. And somebody once said to me, if you're doing a comedy scene, it's a good indicator when you're laughing out loud while you're doing it, that it's going to work. But maybe not always. I don't know. Alright, so now I'm going to get into the demo here, and we'll go from there. As you've noticed, I have a desktop picture of this kind of this office with this desk, and I guess it just got me thinking about the scene I want to do, and I'm leaving it up for inspiration. I kind of want to draw that mood and feeling to it. So I wrote out a kind of a simple story. It's more of a scene, but I'm hoping that it has somewhat of a beginning, middle, and end. There's kind of a setup, professor talking to this father. I have a turn, and then at the very end a resolution. So I try to give myself just something, and I try to get out of it really quickly, get in it really quickly, and just move forward. So I'm just gonna, typically what I would do in the workplace is take my script page and kind of read through it, and then I'll start maybe doing some thumbnails, even as I read it the first time sometimes, and just any type of shots that kind of stand out to me. Mind you, I've done the scene and I've written the scene in such a way that theoretically it could all take place in a shot, much like that image on my desktop. Now, would that be fun to watch? Probably not. But it would work. Now, we find reasons to cover everything. Let's say that was kind of an establishing shot of some sort. And we could do, theoretically, the whole sequence from that point of view. Let's kind of go through it. Somewhere in rural England, afternoon. I'm picturing afternoon lighting, some warm glow. I want it to feel welcoming in the beginning, so it's a school office. We don't really know what's going on. The name is Professor Carla Brennan. She says, "Hello, Jeff. Have a seat." Actually, she should probably address him by Mr. Walters, even though his name is Jeff. I don't think it ever comes up, and I think it's weird to have a professor call him by his first name. So Mr. Walters, Jeff, sits down, and Professor Carla Brennan, she closes her door. She says, "I want to thank you for coming all the way down here. I won't keep you long. Your son has been chosen to be a part of a study conducted by the Oxford Medical School. They want to learn more about his piano playing abilities and how they correlate with his ability to predict the future." I know this sounds corny. I'm straight ahead writing, okay? He said, the father says, "Excuse me?" He's kind of taken aback. "Professor Brennan, you surely you've noticed. Why, Mr. Walters, your son has a gift." He says, "I'm not sure I follow. What makes you think he can... Well, isn't that why you brought him to us?" "I'm not sure why." Look, they want him to come in 5 days a week to Dr. Peterson's lab just to take tests. And while he's there, he can attend classes with a full scholarship, get ahead of others his age, and make use of his talents. This is Oxford, Mr. Walters. Think of your son." He does so. He thinks about it, and then he stands up. "Thank you for your time. I'm going to have to think it over. Talk to my son." He puts his hat on, walks toward the door. He puts his hands in his pockets, and he feels something, and he stops in his tracks. He removes an object from his pocket, and then he turns back towards the professor. "Where do we sign?" She's confused, taken aback. I gotta put this back. I gotta write this out, but he holds out an exec's card which simply states, "Let me go, ask her for $5,000, save the farm." Professor smiles as they both sit down. She grabs a folder of paperwork. He removes his hat and begins to sign papers with her. So, I'm not much of a writer. It's real straightforward and simple, but there's a lot we can do with this. So first of all, we could do it pretty straightforward. Have an establishing shot and get our coverage. Now that's the thing. We can do it by the book, but it'll feel by the book. And as Nestor Almendros, cinematographer, look him up, as he would say in his book, if you did it by the book, it might as well be done by a robot. We're humans. We should make choices, make decisions, bring something to it. Think about the scene. So we could do this pretty much by the book. We have an establishing shot. She offers him to sit down or whatever, and he sits down. Maybe he sits down like this. And then, he watches as we hear her shut the door, and then he tracks with her as she crosses to screen right or screen left and sits down in front of him. So now we have an over the shoulder of the two of them. Maybe it's even closer in, something like this. And now we cut back and forth, complementary angles, over his shoulder, over his shoulder, over her shoulder, over his shoulder, over her shoulder. So this is Walters, and this is Brennan. Okay, so this is Walter, and this is Brennan. So she shuts the door over here, makes the sound, and then she crosses over,
sits down in front of him, and they begin to talk. And we could just go back and forth between these two shots for the entire scene. Do we want to do that? Probably not, right? Maybe at some point when he stands up, we go back to that establishing shot, so we could see him stand up, and it feels like, if we're going back and forth between their faces, and then we cut out wide like this, maybe it feels like the discussion's over. We're not gonna have the discussion anymore. He says thank you for your time, and then walks towards camera, and then maybe he crosses the 180 as there's a change, and then we can have this whole moment where he looks down at the note, and like I said, complementary angles. He's looking down at it, at the note in his hand, and then we're looking up from the note's point of view of him looking at it, get some of the acting in there, and then cut back to maybe her looking at him. This is Brennan. This is Walter. This is Walter. 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 So I have him cross. She's looking at him. He's looking at her. And he says his deal, and then walks back to the table, and they sit down and sign paperwork. And just to change it up, I mean, you can kind of use the same setup, but it'll be like a B. So that's a simple pass. That's just pretty straightforward. We got our coverage. Most of it's going to be in these two shots, and we would actually progress that in a simple way with maybe going and so maybe she's in the entire shot and he's here, and then maybe she's just off and we're closer on him, and then maybe we do singles, and the opposite would be true for the other point of view. It would just be flipped, but if that makes sense. Okay, so that's the thumbnail section. That's if we do it again. That's pretty much by the book, right? So I want to show you what this looks like. I'm going to go ahead and storyboard some of this, and then we'll approach it a different way. So here's some of the quick character designs I came up with. Like I said, I had used that photo as kind of a inspiration, but then I just started drawing the characters. And mind you, when I start drawing the characters more, I'll find like a rhythm, and I'll find a shorthand, and I'll probably abbreviate these characters or modify them or improve on them, find more expression for them. But this was just kind of a starting off point that I wanted to give myself in order to know how I might clean them up when I do if and when I do clean them up. But yeah, this is kind of what my rough aim is. So so just drawing the page of character designs, maybe from the angles that you're going to see them the most, or in the actions or poses that you kind of know for sure they might take. That's kind of what you want to go after. Well, for the sake of time, I've went ahead and recorded myself drawing, and now I'm going to do some narration over it. But for the first pass of the scene, doing it by the numbers, I've decided to just kind of breeze through this really quickly because it took longer than I thought, and I want you guys to see me working on the final product. So basically what I did is I drew like a boring hallway. I decided to just have a very sterile shot. There's not much of a decision being made here. It's pretty straightforward. He comes to the office, knocks on the door. You can see that I'm working in layers here on the right side. And I do like an onion layer, which is kind of like I make a layer, lower the opacity on one of the layers. I'll talk through a little bit more about my process when I'm doing the next phase in real time, but I thought I would do this in quick time, in double speed or whatever, just so you can see some of the decisions I'm making. So in any case, I'm going to pitch you the final one. So I thought I'd just show this to you real quick. And again, I'm sorry this is going so fast, but as I was doing this, I started it's really hard to resist because over after time your instincts want to make decisions while you're doing it, and I was trying to do it right by the numbers, so you guys can see just the basic coverage and basic acting even. I tried to make the acting choices semi-generic, straightforward, whatever would be the predictable uh, expressions and reactions to things. Not that the next one that I'll do is going to be that much different, but I wanted you guys to see. As you can see, I reuse poses sometimes, and then at least for the first pass, and I write down the dialogue just so I can have it when I pitch. As you can see, I'm listening to different scores of music. Sometimes listening to music while you work helps you get in the mood or find a rhythm or a pacing to things. I have my script on the left there with the thumbnail so I can refer to it. Basically, I've copied different frames. So within one file, Photoshop file, on the right you see I have all these different groups, little panel numbers or whatever. What I'll do is I'll duplicate the layers and put them into the other, or I can duplicate the group. I've created an action for myself to export the layers, and so when I save it out, it does it automatically for me. So initially, as you see here, I'm backtracking, sorry. As you see here, I have him exit, and he's still on screen right, at least from the girl. And then I decided to go back and change it. You'll see here. Yeah, here I start to change it and make him cross over, because I wanted it to have a different feeling. I wanted him to cross past her, and then the scene is kind of changed. I'm going to have him on the left. He'll turn to the right. Now he's screen left instead of right. I was taught that, I don't know, if you see the screen left to right change in the shot, then you can it's a little easier on the audience to know where characters have gone. So that's one way to break the 180 rule, is to show them switch in a shot instead of switching without seeing it. Okay, so this is pretty much the end. He sits down. Da 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 da. Okay, let me pitch the scene to you. Okay, so here's the scene. He comes in and he walks up to this door, knocks on it, waits, opens up. Hello, Mr. Walters. She welcomes him in. Door closes. She walks over. Have a seat. They sit down. I want to thank you for coming all the way down here. I won't keep you long. Your son has been chosen to be part of a study conducted by the Oxford Medical School, and they want to learn more about his piano playing abilities and how they correlate with his ability to predict the future. Excuse me? Oh, surely you've noticed. Mr. Walters, your son has a gift. I'm not sure I follow. What makes you think he can... Well, isn't that why you brought him to us? I'm not sure why. Look, they want him to come in 5 days a week to Dr. Peterson's lab just to take tests. And while he's there, he can attend classes with a full scholarship, get ahead of others his age, and make use of his talents. Stands up. Thank you for your time. I'm gonna have to think it over. Talk to my son. He starts to walk off. Puts his hand in his pocket and he feels something, and he stops and pulls out an index card. He opens it up and looks at it. The teacher's wondering what's going on. And he turns. Where do we sign? She's surprised as he hands up the note to her. She takes it. Let me go. Ask for $5,000. Save the farm. He takes off his hat and sits down. Okay, so in all honesty and all openness and fairness, this writing is terrible. And what I had done is I pitched it to a friend of mine, and I encourage you guys to do the same when you do things. Sometimes you're up really late and things seem like a good idea, or things seem like they make sense to you when you're writing it, and you're like, hey, this is totally clear. But I pitched the idea verbally to a couple of friends, and then I pitched the actual what I pitched to you just now, the images, and it wasn't as clear as I had hoped. And from our discussion, there came a lot of good ideas. So, in all fairness, I have taken some of these ideas from a friend of mine, Ted Forgrave, who I work with, and I tried to implement them. So I went ahead and rewrote it a little bit. Let me show you some of the new pages. So here you can see I went ahead and did some more thumbnails, trying to figure out the scene. The beginning part where he knocks on the door, I'm going to decide to get rid of that. I'm probably just going to have the door open, her offer, have his point of view as he enters into a bigger room. He's going to look around. He's going to be a little overwhelmed by the grandeur of this, the classiness, or the however you want to say it. He's out of his element. He's a farmer. In any case, this is kind of the lighting scheme I was thinking of, dark silhouette. It's nice warm light, so it is welcoming. I think I mentioned that before, sorry. But here's your over-the-shoulder shots, some of him looking around. I was going to, because I flipped them left to right, and again, in the beginning it's a little dark. On the exit, I was thinking of exiting with him on the left still and her on the right, and pulling out of the window, and the light is shining differently on them. So they're not backlit now, and now it's shining on the front of them. And it'd be a little more, I don't know, of a change, a visual change. But I did change a lot of the story here. Not entirely, but I got rid of the piano. I don't know what the heck I was thinking about the piano playing skills. So let me pitch the new part, and I'm going to try to highlight some of the things that kind of stand out. Now this is what I'll usually do on a script page when I get it. I'll go ahead and highlight things that I find significant. Actually, for now, I'll just underline things. It says, Professor Carla Brennan, thank you for coming. Professor Brennan, she says, thank you for coming, Mr. Walters. Have a seat. He's going to walk in, look around, be overwhelmed by the beautiful setting. And here you can see this is kind of what inspired the story. This is kind of the room that I was thinking of. Mr. Walters sits. Professor Carla Brennan closes her door. Mr. Walters holds up a piece of paper. She says, oh yes, you've got our letter. I want to thank you for coming all the way down here. I won't keep you long. Your son has been chosen to be a part of a study conducted by the Oxford Medical School. They want to learn more about his clairvoyant abilities. He's like, excuse me? And the reason I added the letter was because I wanted him to be like he was invited but didn't entirely know what was happening, what it was all about. She says, surely you've noticed, why, Mr. Walters, your son has a gift. He says, I'm not sure I follow. What makes you think he can... Oh, maybe he does understand clairvoyance, sorry. She says, well, isn't that why you're here? Instead of, isn't that why you brought him to us? I got rid of that. He's more just there because he got a letter. He's curious as to what the meeting's about. He goes, I'm not sure why. How do you know my son? She says, oh, he contacted us. She opens up an envelope and pulls out a letter. Mr. Walters is confused. He simply shakes his head and chuckles. Well, he's just a boy. I mean, besides, we can't afford any type of travel. She says, look, they want him to come in 5 days a week to Dr. Peterson's lab just to take tests. While he's there, he can attend classes with a full scholarship, get ahead of others his age, and make use of his talents. This is Oxford, Mr. Walters. Think of your son. He says, what makes you think he can... She says, we sent him a test a few months ago. He predicted elections, stock market declines, even the rainfall in downtown. She sorts through some papers. She's looking for something. Finally lands on a page and extends it out to Mr. Walters, who just simply stands up. He doesn't take it. He says, he's a boy. He doesn't even know where Oxford is, or what a pound is worth, or what he wants to be when he grows up. professor doesn't really say much. She just looks down, adjusts her glasses, and she finds a piece of paper. Or she offers up the same piece of paper to Mr. Walter again. This time he takes it, but he doesn't read it. He says, "Thank you for your time. I'm going to have to think it over. Talk to my son." He puts his hat on and starts to walk towards the door. He nervously handles the paper. He glances at it, and he stops in his tracks before he can get to the door. The paper simply lists, in his son's handwriting, Roosevelt, Sears, 2.2, United Kingdom, 325. And then we see his reaction, and then it says farmer. And he slowly turns. He says, "Where do we sign?" Professor smiles. They both sit down again. She grabs some paper, folder paperwork. Mr. Walters removes his hat, begins to sign the papers. So in any case, this is going to be the heavy part here, you know. Whoops. Excuse me. This is our moment that we're shooting for. This moment where it dawns on him. It confirms. It's his son's handwriting, and we'll make it like a kid's handwriting in order to sell it. And there's a lot of back and forth shots that I didn't write in, but this gives you an idea of where we're going to go with this in the next one. Okay, so now I'm going to let you watch some of the real-time storyboarding of the second pass. I've jumped into about the third or fourth panel here. I'm not going to be able to show the whole thing. It's like 3 hours, and we just don't have time for that. So, but in the meantime, as I mentioned before, I work in the groups. Right now I'm opening the door, I'm warping it. You could do Command T to transform. So you select whatever you want to modify, and then you can transform. So I did the door opening, now I'm cutting out the rest of that shading. And I kind of chose to do the entrance, the opening this way, because you kind of jump right into the scene. Now mind you, the guy is missing in the foreground. I'm going to add him later coming into the door, but I thought I'd get the mechanics of this door working. A lot of times I work out the background because the characters I can figure out where they move, they're a constant, but the background's kind of stiff and still. So I'll go ahead and do the background, work out that stuff, and then I'll work out the character. So anyways, yeah, this girl was the female is kind of challenging to me because I wanted her to look academic, but she kind of looks masculine, like a male. It's funny, my daughter came in when I was working on it, and she thought, "Oh, I thought that was a boy." I think it occurred to her at some point that it was a girl. In any case, I'll show you guys the cleanup of this area as well. But in any case, yeah, I try to have a process, a style that's legible enough, but then, the rough reads. But it could use a cleanup pass, but I try not to work too rough because I think it just adds one more pass. So let's say your scene, I think this scene is like 116 panels. Let's say I did it really, really rough. Then if I wanted to do it cleaner, another like rougher clean, it would be like, what is that, 232? And that's not even with the tight cleanup. So with the tight cleanup, it would turn into 342. No, that doesn't make sense. 44. In any case, you get my point. So it just exponentially grows the more passes you take. So I try to keep it down to 2. So you can see, sometimes I'm on model, sometimes I'm off, and I'll try to clean up the off or on model in the cleanup phase sometimes. At this point, I just want to get as much of the proportions and the volumes that I'm going to have to trace over for the cleanup, and I also want to get in the see, I had the idea, I was like, oh, he's missing from the area, so I went back and added him. So yeah, like I said, so the reason I wanted to do this is you're coming from the dark hallway and coming into this really grandiose, beautiful room, coming into the lighting. And mind you, I would probably do more lighting in the cleanup, just to have it sing, just to have it really clear, so I don't have to pitch that it's nice. It just is nice. And here we don't see the character's face. I don't know why we don't see the character's face. There should be a reason for that. I show him later. I show him from far away. I probably should have shown his face when he first entered the room. Yep. Now that I'm watching it again, I'm thinking about that. Okay. I'm going to scroll through this a little bit, so here goes the speed up. So you can see I play back and forth. I'll actually zoom out, zoom in. When you transform, you zoom out so I can see the whole piece. See, I'm moving him around because I'm eyeballing the perspective here. He comes in. So I play through the previous panels as much as I can to kind of get a sense of what's happening. Like I'm watching it. And I try to save as often as possible so I don't lose everything. So at first I had him come in from the moving left to right, but then it occurred to me he's going to be on the right side of the screen most of the time. So even me, I'm dealing with this 180 rule all the time, trying to catch myself. So I'm trying to figure out what the scale of this room is going to be. I guess that's where I landed on. So this is just a rough, and then I lighten it, and then I expanded it a little bit so I can do a camera move a little bit. I have him looking over, but then I'm going to insert a shot here. Move the background, have him looking up, adjusting the eyes. And see, I can rearrange the order of shots later. So I zoomed this out. I made it larger so I can move it. I draw this table. Same here, I expanded it. Now I can move it. And I put a little bit of shading on it. So now I'm going to work out the actual order of things. In any case, I go to the next shot, start drawing in the background, rearranging shapes. This one was a tough one. For some reason I couldn't wrap my head around this shot. In any case, you can see I'm getting there. She comes in. Again, I'm eyeballing the perspective, but luckily stuff doesn't stay on screen long enough to where people get really critical. She starts to sit down, and then it occurred to me, oh, I wanted him to show the letter. Watch, I'll check I'll check the script again and realize I'd forgotten that. So then, let's see, I go back and now I add him showing the paper. I didn't know how to get that gesture right, so I started over. It looks weird. I still don't think it's right, but I'll have to figure out that gesture of like, hey, I brought this envelope. It might be a matter of adding more panels so it reads better. And then I started editing in the dialogue from Baja 4. This one I had trouble with too. I moved her around quite a bit. Any case, the thing is really, really long. It's 3 hours. I'm not going to bore you. But just know that I started picking and choosing these shots. I wanted him looking around. Again, I'm just doing some over the shoulder. I'm going to progress it in a second. Once he gets the news about the whole predicting the future. Clairvoyant. She's very casual. He's still listening. And this is where she's like, I shouldn't even notice. Your son is a gift. So I'm going to cut in closer. So here I'm getting ahead of myself to write some dialogue, so I don't have to worry about that and I can keep drawing. Must be some sort of mistake. Then I decided to keep it on him instead of cutting back and forth too much. I have her say her line on his expression here. As he listens to it, he contacted us, and then I think that was an overreaction. I would change that now, but not for this. Reading this, I have her opening the envelope, but you see how I drew her first from the top of the head because I'm going to pan it. Pan up. It's a little camera move. He doesn't take it from her. He's incredulous. Hope this is all making sense. So, have her get into it. She's a little closer, more on axis. She's talking directly to him, so we want to feel that a little bit. So I blurred him in the foreground. I would probably add a shade in there. In the cleanup pass, kind of block that shape out so you could feel it, but yeah, the muddled changes so much. I'm sorry. So then I went back and stole that shot from previously. Here I decided to make him a little more animated so that there's a little more of a range to his character. I felt like the first pass was a little bit, I don't know, he seemed a little too dreary. Like he didn't seem like he cared enough. And my friend Ted was mentioning when I showed him the first pass of the rough one, the first version of it. He was like, yeah, it'd be good if he debated a little more or argued with her a little bit. And I thought, yeah, that's more interesting. So in any case, so that's what I decided to do. Have him kind of like, what makes you think he can, whatever, And she just, I'm really happy I ended up at that pose. I don't know how I ended up at that, but it worked out. She has a pen now. I don't know where she got the pen. She starts counting on her fingers. So again, this is stuff that you've seen in real life, so you're using it. Trying to think of details in the performance, specifics in the performance that you can use that people recognize, they're familiar with. Her resting with her elbows on the table. She's much more comfortable about this situation as he gets more unraveled. I decided to get in close on him because he's feeling a little bit claustrophobic. He's feeling a little overwhelmed, so I thought we'd cut in really close to him, block him in. He'd be like, oh, ah. And I wanted him to lash out with this line. He doesn't even know where Oxford is. And I wanted to be close on him. I had trouble with that drawing. And then I wanted her to just be, like, it's not a big deal to her, but he's overreacting. He gets up. He's like, he doesn't know what a pound's worth. He doesn't know what does he say? What he wants to be. And then this was kind of a revelation when I was boarding it, and I kind of like it. I don't know, like almost as though the hat represents a farmer. Here, I'll play real time. Almost as though the hat represents his occupation as a farmer, and talking like, I kind of wanted the subtext of like he wants his son to be like him. He wants his son to be a farmer and be like himself. And so he says he doesn't even know what he wants to be when he grows up. And he realizes he's grown up to be a farmer, and his son could grow up to be a farmer. He's thinking about all these things, as he sees his hat, his weathered hat. And he's just taking it in. And, I didn't write that in the script. I didn't think about it until I had him gesturing and I had him with this prop. And again, that's why props are kind of fun and interesting, because you can interact with them and they could be part of the performance and part of the storytelling. So now he's really taking in this hat. And in the next shot, it's a little confusing, but I think the voice acting would be fine to clarify it. See, I worked out that main gesture first, made sure I could fit it in, and then I started working out the drawing. Here he says, "Thank you for your, thank you for your time. I'm gonna have to think about it. Talk to my son." And she's not even. She already knows he's decided, so she's not even looking at him while he's talking. She's just go ahead and folds up the paper. She already knows what's on it. She already read it. She knew the last 3 answers, but he doesn't. So she just hands it to him. He grabs it, and I think it's a little overly aggressive as I practice pitched the scene, grabbing it like that, but I don't know. He storms off. Kind of wanted to make him feel a little bit more passionate about the situation, so he storms off, grabs it. I'm stealing this background that I drew earlier for the first shot when he walked in. I have her stand up. He storms off, puts his hat on right away. I wanted him to take his hat off again at the end. And then we started panning up because I thought, oh, I can't fit his face in. I don't want to cut. I can stay right here. And then stole some shots of her standing there, him reading it. Now I could probably make this writing look a little more individualized. And this would be around 1933 is what I was figuring. And then boom, that close up as he sees farmer. I played with the arrangement of shots a few times to see what was working best. He's glancing over it, and then he turns, hands back, and she already knows. She read the list, so she's just waiting for him to catch up, basically. And then I wanted this pose at the end for him to be slightly defeated here. Okay, now it's time to pitch it. I've only practiced a couple of times, and I must admit I haven't pitched it to another person yet, but I'll go through this, and I'll try not to stop too much. I'll try to describe very little, but hopefully it all makes sense. So comes up, and the door opens, and she goes, "Ah, Mr. Walters, thank you for coming." She offers him to come in. He goes, "Thank you." He walks past her into this beautiful room. He's kind of in awe, looking around. He's kind of out of his element. The door closes. The professor closes the door. He's looking around at this table with some trophies, and he kind of looks up, and there's like certificates and awards. And she comes over and goes, "Have a seat." He kind of waves the envelope. She goes, "Oh yes, you got our letter." They sit down. She's very proper, and he's kind of awkward. He's like, oh, she says, "I want to thank you for coming all the way down here. I won't keep you long. Your son has been chosen to be part of a study conducted by the Oxford Medical School. They want to learn more about his clairvoyant abilities." "Excuse me?" "Why, Mr. Walters, surely you've noticed. Your son has a gift?" "There must be some sort of mistake. You know my son? He contacted us." "What?" She opens up an envelope and takes out a letter. She offers him to read it. He doesn't take it. "Why, he's just a boy. I mean, besides, we can't afford any type of travel. Look, they want him to come in 5 days a week to Dr. Peterson's lab just to take some tests, where while he's there he can attend classes with a full scholarship and get ahead of other kids his age and make use of his talents." He kind of looks up at this. "This is Oxford, Mr. Walters. Think of your son." "What makes you think he can—" "We sent him a test a few months ago. He predicted elections, stock market declines, even the rainfall in downtown." "He's a boy. He doesn't even know where Oxford is, or what a pound is worth, or—" He looks at his hat. "Or what he wants to be when he grows up." "Thank you for your time. I'm gonna have to think it over. Talk to my son." She just offers up the letter. He grabs it. Starts to walk off. She stands and watches him as he looks at the letter, glances at it, but then he slows to a stop. He looks down, and it's all the answers to the questions that he asked himself. And then he looks down at the last one, what he wants to be when he grows up. She smiles. "Where do we sign?" She offers him the chair, walks back, takes his hat off again, and sits down. So in any case, you might, when you do your scenes, practice pitch a little more and try to finesse it, add any panels that you think you might need to help it read and sell, and then the parts that are roughest you might want to try to clean up, and then parts that you really want to have an emphasis and a big bang, I always tend to go to the very first panels and try to clean those up, because typically I'm rushing as I'm getting started and getting into the rhythm of drawing. The first few drawings out of my I'd say the first 10, 12 drawings in my scene are always the worst drawn, because I'm ramping up my draftsmanship as I'm getting through the scene, and my draftsmanship should get better, and then I get exhausted and it gets worse again. So pumping up the draftsmanship, the cleanup towards the beginning and the end is good, and then any other important parts, it's good to clean up as well. So anyways, that's the scene, and from here we might as well just show you some of the cleanup that I had done. I'll just give you a quick. I cleaned up these panels, but I didn't clean up any of these, and I would shade these to kind of get a nice lighting effect, so that when it goes to editorial, it has the feeling that I was kind of describing, like this beautiful room or whatever. Editorial won't have me pitching that, so they'll have to have it in the boards. It'll have to show in that, so I might glamour up some of these shots. Any case, it took, I think, like a couple hours for the rough pass, and for this second pass of a different version, I went ahead and I recycled a few boards, as you noticed, but for the most part I boarded it fresh, and that took a few hours. So then the cleanup takes into like another, the cleanup that you'll see is only like 20-30 minutes, but I'll just skim through some of it and describe some of it, and then I'll also just I'll let you see some in real time. Okay, so now I'm gonna just go ahead and narrate a little more on. This is when I was blocking in the. This is real time of blocking in those shades. What's cool is when you're drawing and you're working rough, you're like, you have a lot of ugly lines and whatnot, and sometimes your characters are transparent. In the shading part, you can actually start to make them opaque so that they don't shine through so much. And it's killing two birds with one stone. Some people will deal with making them opaque right away, but I find that when I'm doing the values and stuff like that, I like having them clear or not opaque or whatever, so they're just lines. So I'm trying to find the right tone to make the front of them pop, have the light hitting on them. Now mind you, I didn't clean up that drawing. I probably should have cleaned up that drawing. Trying to make him pop. So one of the things I try to tell the students is to have a foreground, middle ground, background. It's something to keep in mind that it gives it a little more space. The same with values. If you get too many values in there, sometimes it's just really hard to read. Keep it to like a couple, like 2, 3, 4 values, and then. So I wanted to make her lighter because I think closer to the foreground, I wanted to make it darker. I'm trying to figure out which layer everybody's on. So it's cool, yeah. So now she's gonna start popping because okay, I gotta move that chair, put the chair behind her. I'm trying to figure out the layers. Where is it? Turn them off and on. Okay, there it goes. So now she's gonna read fine. All that stuff was reading through her before. Okay, I'm gonna scroll. Can't take this. So we're gonna scroll through. You can see, making her opaque makes her stand out more from the background. And I don't worry too much about the detail in the background because I know they're gonna read. So now I'm gonna start doing the cleanup. I'll let you watch. I'm not much of a character designer, so I tend to go more realistic for some reason. My first instinct, like comic book style or something. It's not even clean enough to be comic book style. So you can see the cleanup is a lot different than my rough. But the rough, it's there, I got the shapes and the volumes as much as I can. But I'm making a lot of decisions when I'm almost as though I'm drawing it for the first time, and the other layer, the rough layer, is just to kind of give myself some footing, help me not have to work so hard to imagine it taking up that space. And the composition's worked out too, so that's nice. Okay, I'm gonna go fast forward here. So you can see, still trying to learn how to draw her. And then once I'd done that, I had to clean up some of the tones after the fact. Find a little bit more, fix the hat. Now this guy is pretty off. I had to redraw quite a bit here. Fix the ellipse on the hat, now fix the tone. And that's it. Now I'm going to show this other part near the end that oh man, this background takes forever. The good thing is once you've done a background, I tend to spend a little more time on backgrounds sometimes when there's not much else to look at in the shot with the actor. I'll draw a little bit more. The good thing is, you get a lot of bang for your buck. You put in a lot into it, but you get to keep it on there for a long time. You don't have to redraw it moving or anything. So whatever I put into the background, I get to for free in the following frames. And then I lighten it and blur it. I think I blur it later. So yeah, you can see I'm doing the tones. Get that light in, have him pop, stand off of the background. This guy I totally redrew. I didn't like the angle of him. I wanted him a little more back. So I roughed it, and then I cleaned it again. Wow, I couldn't get that right, could I? So now I'm doing the cleanup. And then I'm going to start tweaking that quite a bit. Not done tweaking that head. This is not looking right to me. So then I started moving the background. I think it was to make up for the fact that the drawings were changing too much in size. But if the camera's moving, then it justifies it. People can't keep track of what's what. Smoke and mirrors. Hopefully you're learning a lot of tricks or bad habits, however you want to put it. So yeah, that's that.
Okay, just to be thorough, I went ahead and I wanted to show you guys all the differences between the two. There's not really that much of a difference. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the term camera setups, or I was taught by certain people to try to be efficient and economical with my shots and try to reuse shots as much as possible, because it allows for the audience to not have to get oriented. Whenever you do a new shot, the audience has to get oriented with what they're looking at, and if you go back to a shot that you've already done, then they can know exactly what they're looking at, essentially. So let me see. So you could see, let's see, I have one camera set up here, which to me was pretty wasteful, and I'll get to that later. But then we go inside and we see him walk in, and then they sit down, and then I come back to that shot here when he gets up to walk away, and then when he comes back to sit down. So it's essentially the same shot. Now let's look at the third shot. This one, I go back to it, I use it 3 times, and I have him stand up in this shot, but it's the same shot. And then I have this shot of her, of the front. Now mind you, some of these are how do you say it, A's and B's and whatnot. So this would be a 4th shot, and then this would be a, this would almost be a 4A, or a 4B. What I mean by that is it's essentially the same camera setup but pushed in on her. So it'd have the same lighting, but we would just adjust the camera instead. Let's see. Then you have this shot of him, which is a close-up, which again would be like similar to this one, but just pushed in, right? Then you have this one, which is her standing up, and then this one of him turning around, and then you have this one of him handing her the note. So I essentially have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and we'll call this 3B. Then we have 4, 4B, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 shots. Now the second one, the second scene that I did is essentially, let's see, I think it's 13 or something, or says, let me see, yeah, about 12 or 13. So we have 1 here, there's your 1s. So I use it in the opening, and then he goes and sits down, then I have him stand up. I reuse that shot from the first one, and then he goes and sits down, which I pretty much just slightly adjusted from the first one. Then we have 2, which is him walking, the pan shot. We have 3, which is the close-up on the trophies. And then 4 is a pan with him as he looks up. 5 is the awards. 6, A. And then we have some 6A's over here. Oh no, that's 6C and D. So here's all the 6s, okay? So we got this over the shoulder, where he's pretty much his whole head is in the shot, and then this one without his head. This is the same one without his head, but we pan up, or we pan from down up to her again. This one's kind of zoomed in a little bit, but
essentially the same lighting setup, I think. So we would just zoom in. We would do a camera adjustment there. This is that same shot. And then this one is this one's pulled back a little bit, but zoomed in a little bit, so we're not as close to his ear as we are in this one. There's no reason one way or another. I just wanted to get her body in there. So like this one just has her face. And again, they could become closer in size the more you zoom in or whatever. And this is more of a wide angle here, so we could see more of her body, and he's still relatively the same size as this one. And then this one it's pretty similar to this one. We're probably pulled out a little more so we can see him stand up. Okay, so let's see. What else do we have? Our sevens. Our 7 shots. So we have 7. This is her again. This is very similar to the ones of him. We have her pretty much full body. This is a little closer, and then she's gone in this shot. And then she's back to this one. And then we see him by himself. A little bit of her here over her shoulder. And then this one's a lot closer in on him. And then here we have her whole head again, like the first shot. So we could see him stand up. Now I hope this is all helpful. I don't know. Here we have this is I made this a new shot because it's a slightly down angle. I don't know, it might be similar to the 6 shots. And then this is her standing. This is him looking at the note, and then a closer up of the note. This is him looking at down at the note, and then this is just closer in on him. And then this one is him turning around, which we used in the first one. And that's it. That covers all our shots, as you can see. So that's all of our shots. It's not, let's see, what was it, 12? Yeah, 12 shots, or 12 camera setups. So that's not too bad from the 7. It's 5 more, but it feels more full. I added in these shots in the beginning. Yeah, let's see what the differences are that way. I'm going to lower the brightness here. So we can see, basically I combined these 2 shots of her opening the door. This is what they might call shoe leather, him walking to the door to knock on it. But we don't want to just cut 2 and he's knocking. Well, we could cut 2 and have him knocking on the door, but we could also have it in the same shot as this one, which is what I did with the second one here. So yeah, I have him here, and this shot opens up and he goes in, rather than having him outside the hall and then coming in. Okay, and then in between these 2 shots, I inserted him walking through right here. So basically you could see it goes from him inside, to him walking and her coming up behind him, him walking and her coming up behind him. So we basically just inserted all this stuff of him being overwhelmed and looking around. So just to get that feeling of, you know, being a fish out of water in a different environment. And then we inserted in here when he stops, and then her reaction here. That's what we have here. He stops, her reaction. I guess it would be on the other side. Sorry. It would be here, right? But the thing is, we come off over here too, so it could be either one. So anyways, I added the shot of him looking at the note, closer at the note, and then we basically go to what we had before, and I cut this out, obviously. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Those are the fixes that I did with the shots, but with the acting it was much more. So like I said, when I pitched it to a buddy, I had given myself some notes, some mental notes to maybe make him more verbal, make him more active, make him a little more vocal and argumentative a little bit, so that he can be a little more surprised, a little more defensive, a little more protective, and a little more skeptical, rather than just having him blink. I wanted him to make it a little more believable. I wanted him to be a little more skeptical. And then I don't know, we just added a lot of poses to things. Let's see. So It's pretty straightforward. I had decided after doing the second pass, even if I were to do more, I'd probably fix these two shots. This shot of her going, he contacted us, and then his eyes widen. I would probably tone that down or make it less surprise and more a little bit like, I don't know, frustrated surprise rather than like shocked surprise. It's kind of a difference. So the acting can really play a big role. The same with this one. When she offers up the letter, and I would smooth this out because he has this line here. I would probably keep it in this shot through this line. I'd keep this shot through this line where he says, "Thank you for your time," and then I'd cut to this where he says, "I'll have to talk to my son," and she just offers up the paper, and he grabs it a little aggressively, and I didn't like that too much. I think I would just have him grab it regular. So that's what I would change. There's no reason for him to be angry. So anyways, so I went ahead and cleaned this part up, and it would be nice if I could put some shading on all of it throughout the whole thing, and I would do that. That typically would give you 3 days to a week to clean up something in a work environment, to shade it and whatnot, prepare it for editorial to make it nicer, and then you always get a lot of time right before screenings. Well, not a lot of time, but in theory, get some more time to do some cleanups. So, okay, so here's the playback. This is at 400%, so it's actually faster. You can see I'm trying to find the composition. I'm rearranging the figures. She looks a little too short here. I'm going to raise her up in a second, I'm pretty sure. I'll have to move him over. I felt like they need to take the right amount of space in the... So right now I'm envisioning the entire plane, the ground plane, where the elements are. And again, this is, your mind's eye gets a little sharper over time. And again, knowing your set really well helps a lot too, because you kind of know what you have to use as compositional elements. I knew I had those windows, I knew I had the bookcase on the left side, and then I have some chairs and a table, extra chairs. And again, this is like in a hall. I probably should have set up in my pitch, if I were to pitch to a new person, that it takes place in 1933 roughly. So this is a while back. I try to get it in the costumes. If you were going to really be meticulous for like a pitch to a studio for like a movie project or something, you might want to be more specific with the costumes. Get an actual character designer who's good with that type of research, or you could do it yourself. Regardless, so you could see I use very basic I use a very basic process. Each of these groups is a different panel. It's a different image. And so what I'll do is I have a button set up that just on my Cintiq, and you could do this with your F1s or F2s or whatever you have on your keyboard, to create an action and set a command to it so that you could just duplicate the layers. And then I have a button for my pen, I have a button for my shading, and then I have a button for a lasso, I have a button for fill background. I have a button for duplicate, I have for duplicating a layer, I have one for creating a new layer, and then I have my Alt Control Z, which will step backwards in time up to a certain amount. I don't know, I think you do the setting. So anyways, you can see I play back, I go through the last few frames every time I'm about to draw the next frame. Kind of an animator thing of like flipping your pages. And you can see the very basic setup is I create a new layer, lower the opacity on the previous one, and I draw over it. And sometimes I lasso things to change the size of the character and whatnot. So now I have a new one. The OS means off screen. I could have put the character's name before each text, before each how do you say it, the dialogue. So anyways, I know she's looking down. I draw the glasses. So I tend to start on the figure at different places. I want to wait to cut to him until he has something to react to. So she's saying some stuff. She says, "I won't keep you long." I cut to him because Well, let's see. Let's see if I put my foot in my mouth. Because right now I'm doing narration over this playback. Oh yes, I wanted to have him looking around still. Kind of in awe of the setting. So he's not really listening. He's listening, but he's listening peripherally. He's very focused on the setting. Because she's just talking nonchalantly right now. So I won't keep you long. Kind of drawing some ground plane, drawing some props just to give it a little more setting. Then I hire the opacity. Oops, I accidentally grabbed him. I didn't create a new layer, so then I separate the layers so the background's on its own layer. And I go ahead and draw the rest of the background to give it a little more depth. And I think it helps, you know? And then I lower the opacity. That way the darkest line is the character, so that people know what to look at. He's not paying attention. She leans in. And I go back to it. I think I rearranged those two. Yeah. I realized my second panel was better as a first panel. And now I'm tracing over it. My first panel was better as a second panel, I think. So now I'm creating a first panel. So this will be the first. That's the second. Mr. Walters. Should have even noticed. In any case, you can see I have some people draw the volume circle thing for the head. I'm not that way, and again it slows me down, so I try to find those features and set them in place and work off of feature to feature and just construct it that way. Now mind you, that's probably why I have more model issues than other people, but at the same time I think it reads and it keeps it lively, and like I said, it saves me a lot of time, so I can be a little faster than others, so it's nice too. Sometimes you get more scenes that way. And people do like, this is the thing, the director could get a scene that's really nicely drawn, but he had to wait 2, 3, 4 more days for it, or he could get it 2, 3, 4 more days earlier. The drawings are not as great, but they're decent. They're totally legible and usable for editorial. And he gets it 3 or 4 days earlier. As a director, wouldn't you rather see your idea sooner or later? And I think it's more about seeing the idea, seeing it quickly turned around, seeing if it's working. And I don't know that the drawings, obviously some scenarios, some sequences, the drawings do play a big role in the success of the scene, how well drawn they are. And those ones you do take your time. But for something like this, we just need the acting, we need the expressions. I don't think they need to be beautiful drawings to get the idea across. So that's your trade-off. You gotta weigh the importance of things. Like we were talking about earlier. You gotta weigh the investment. Do I really need to clean all this up? No, it just needs to be clean enough. Now you could even work rougher than what I'm working right now. You could just work with shapes. You could just work with stick figures, which a lot of people do. They'll work out their stick figures in thumbnail format, whatever, and pitch it that way so the director can say, okay, I like the way it's going. Here's some notes. This is kind of what I'd prefer to see. And then you go ahead and do that. And then you go clean up. So you could buy yourself some time that way. But again, editorial likes to get it, because the longer you take with turning in your scene, the less time editorial has before their deadline. Because essentially you guys share a deadline. You split it with story and you split it with editorial. But ultimately, I tend to look at it like you share the deadline with editorial. So the less time you take, the more time they have. And I like to think of it that way, because editorial, hey, they make you look good, right? They can either make or break your scene. Now editorial will cut out some of your panels. It's nothing personal. They just find a way to make it flow better. And sometimes we overshoot or we undershoot, and sometimes they'll give you more things that they want. So you can see I'm doing trial and error, so I'm trying to find the drawing here. I don't think I found it very well, but it's good enough. As far as practicing draftsmanship, animation is a really great way to learn about drawing and moving volumes in space, and really being able to strengthen your mind's eye, strengthen your imagination on what the shape is doing in space, how it's moving. Again, life drawing is nice because you can see the relationship between the eye and the nose and the other eye, and as you move, the eyes get closer together, the nose gets points further out. So there are things that you do in animation, or in life drawing I mean, that apply to animation and then they apply to storyboarding. A lot of storyboard artists do come from animation background of some sort. Not all of them. There are a lot of illustrators as well that draw as good, or if not better. It's not a matter of that, or it's really insignificant, but I'm just saying that you don't have to come from animation, but it does help to know how to do some 2D animation. It doesn't hurt. But like I said, you don't need to. But I think it's good just for the, how do you say it, the exercise of it. It's almost like saying guys who go through the military, guys or girls, are better UFC fighters. And you might say that because they know how to take a beating, or they have a thicker skin, or they know how to be, they know how to succumb, how not to succumb to pain. This is a stupid comparison, but I'm just saying that it's good training ground to be, I was going to say frivolous, but to be less attached to your drawings, that the drawings are disposable, that the drawings are means to an end to communicate your idea. So you can see I kind of blew through that drawing. It's the more movement there is, I think the easier it is for me. If there's only a subtle movement, like the eyes shifting or the head slightly turning up or down or to the left or right, those drawings are harder, for, in my opinion, to draw than the broader acting stuff. Because I think the poses in a broader scene, a broader acting choice, meaning that it's more exaggerated, the drawings tend to look different. See, I blurred him in the foreground, which is more of a, well, I decided not to, never mind. The drawings look more different in exaggerated poses, so they don't have to look so similar from drawing to drawing. So again, this is a scene with only 2 people, and they look pretty different from each other. So that's another reason I could get away with the model thing. If there was another girl in the room, and again, this is kind of a character designer thing, but when it's your scene, and there is no designs or whatever, if you're creating it for yourself, if you have 2 women that have their hair up in a bun and they both wear glasses and they're wearing relatively the same thing, like a uniform, you better make some kind of distinction between the 2, whether it's lines on the face, lines under the eyes, whether one is heavier set, has a rounder head, one has a more vertical head. See, that's another thing in design, that the functionality of doing those different shapes, it isn't just to make nice looking shapes next to each other, it's also so that you can see the difference between the 2. When you cut to them, you know exactly who it is. It's for clarity. So and again, we might think, if we put these side by side, you go, oh yeah, they look like different people, but because the scene only has the 2 of them and they look distinct enough, she's got glasses, then I don't worry too much. I don't have to stress, I should say, so much about the model. And again, I probably could have done more research, but it is kind of a difficult thing putting this together. And what's funny is I followed those steps that I started off with in this workshop. The idea that you write down your big tentpole ideas and all your imagery. I wrote down interfaces, screenshots. I drew them out, kind of what I was going to show. I had to organize all my thoughts on paper, write them out, change it before I actually made the bullet points and started working on everything. So it's funny, the way I treated the workshop is the same way I treated my scene. And I think it's true for anything in life. You tend to plan and then you execute. But yeah, the workshop is tough. Trying to figure out what kind of scene to do. I was going to do an action scene, and it would be fun to maybe do an action scene in the future. But then the more I thought about it and the more I hear other people talk about the importance of character, character is really, really important. And I think the personalities and the performances and the things, character actions and reactions and personality choices that you put in make more of a difference when they're involved in the action scene. Then, so I thought I'd cover this. This is easier for us to wrap our heads around, and we don't have as many technical issues to deal with this scene. It's pretty straightforward. It's two characters in a room. You don't have as many options as you might have with an action scene, or maybe you do, but none of them are logical. They seem like easier decisions to avoid, cutting to his shoes. That's it's an option, but it's not really a valid one. You're like, yeah, that doesn't even tempt me to draw the shoe because I know it's not about the shoe. Whereas in an action scene, you go, oh, do I cut to this pedestrian? I mean, it might be cool to have that. Or do we cut to the reflection of the car going by? It could be cool, and it could show how close the car is to the building. Or do we show another driver swerving from the guy who's driving wildly through the city? Oh, that might be cool, just to show that there's innocent bystanders. You know what I mean? So you have a lot of options in an action scene. In a scene with two characters in a room, I think the options tend to narrow a lot more, and you kind of know what you're after. So maybe doing an action scene would have been more exciting to watch, but I think this can be easier and more difficult at the same time, and I think it was just something I felt like was visibly easier to understand the principle of doing something by the numbers and then elaborating on it with more detail to strengthen it. And hopefully, in my opinion, I think the second one is stronger. There are things in the first one, especially certain drawings that I did, that I like better. The simplicity of the first one is good too, but I like the more involved characters in the second one. I do like that he's more vocal and verbal, and he expresses himself more. I think it clarifies how he's feeling about certain moments. Now, there's kind of a debate here. I showed my friend the second version, the second pass, the same guy I pitched the first pass to. And I'm just thinking out loud. He mentioned that he felt like he was worried that his son would become a farmer like him. I like that. Although in my mind I intended it like he was worried that he would become a farmer like him. That he wanted him to be something more than he was. No, that's what my friend thought. I wanted him to hope that his son would be a farmer like him, rather than worried about his son becoming a farmer like him. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I probably just confused you, but I wanted him to he's worried that his son won't take over his business, but then he reads at the end here that his son does want to be a farmer. She had a very indifferent expression there, so I changed it to more of a waiting expression. And then this close-up, I had done a thumbnail of the close-up shot, so now I'm kind of copying my thumbnail, and then I put it away, and now I'm just drawing it. And again, I would go over this and clean it up. So right now I'm just searching, finding. In the class, I also cover, gesture drawing, cafe sketching, and one of the tips I give is just to give yourself a starter line. And what I mean by that is just go ahead and make those lines. Don't be afraid that every line needs to be in the right place or at the right angle or whatever. You can always find it. Put a line down, go, that's not right, so make another line, and the darkest, thickest line wins. That's the one that people will look at. And you can see on his face, or on her, the darkest lines win. It's not about those little other hatched lines. You don't look at those as much. And people look at the eyes. They look at the triangle between the two eyes, the nose, and the mouth. There's kind of a little triangle there. And people tend to look at those things really quickly. So here you'll see I waited on the eyes because I'm going to have them shift. And I did them wrong, so I'll be adjusting these. See? Now I have them down. Now he looks cross-eyed, so then I change it. I don't know. I don't know that I ever got that just right, but I would figure that out later. So in any case, we're coming to the end here. Hopefully, so I didn't want her reading the note. She didn't need to read the note. I copied that from before. In any case, that's the workshop, and hopefully this made sense. There's so much more I want to share with you guys, but this, there is the master class that you guys can take too that covers more things in detail. The camera setups, they cover a little bit more of compositional things and shot setups, and then and I show more examples from different movies and stuff of how people structure their scenes and whatnot. Just always know that there's a learning period, there's a trial and error that takes place, and that's all part of the process. And I think you get better with each time that you do it. But the good part is that the next time will be better. So just keep plowing away and moving forward and trying better the next time. And we'll talk to you later. Okay, just for fun, this is like one of those things where like the movie keeps going after the credits are already over. I'm gonna add in a third pass just to be fun and spontaneous and crazy, just to see what's gonna fall out of the tree here. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do a crazy pass? Here, let's try this. We'll try it from the other lady's point of view too. So, ready? This is her. I'm gonna have her working, writing something. She's right-handed, I guess. She's got her hand bracing the paper. Here's the paper. Her posture isn't very good here. I'm going to draw this just to give the head angle. This is something I talk about in gesture drawing too, is to little indicators to get the head angle right. I usually use the nose and the ears, and then you can use the mouth, you can use the costume. There's a lot of different things you can use. I'm going to draw the back of the chair here. And you know what? Because I'm working so fast, I'm not even going to worry about erasing much unless I have to. And also, I'm not going to work on too many separate layers. I'm just going to cut and paste, cut things out if I want to delete them. Although I will work the background in a different layer here. I'm going to make this a big room. A bigger room. See? You just keep adjusting things. Whoops. Started drawing the table leg, but the table is on this layer. So you just got to keep a mind out for things, and then the background I like to put in the back. So here's a new layer. Okay, now I'm going to draw maybe a carpet on the ground. I don't know. Table over here. Is there a table behind the door? Here's the door. The door opens. It'd be cool to have a double door. Let's do it. Why not? And then what do we have over here? I think we had picture frames or something like that, and maybe some kind of trophy things from earlier. Okay. This is a taller ceiling. This is bookcases. Just trust me, it is. Okay. There's the ground plane. Lighten it up. Now we're gonna go sound effects. I don't know why. I don't know where I learned this, but I use the little dot dots on the sides as sound effects. Knock knock. And then I have her react. She goes, what? I don't know why I have all these other frames. I'm going to get rid of these panels. I'll adjust things later. Okay, so new panel. Like I said, I'm just going to cut her out and have her react. Let's see. This is part of her. Yikes. It's a bad cutout. The paper's not going to move, but she is. I'm going to cut her out. I'm going to leave the edge of that table there. Boom. If you do Command Shift J, it'll cut her out and put her onto another layer. So I'm going to make this nice and big here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to copy these into the other frames. So I'm going to copy those down there. Whoops. Down there. There, now the table's not so dark. I'll just stand off the table a little bit. Now she's going to react. There's a knock at the door. She goes, huh? I'm not going to show her walking over there. I'm already deciding because that's shoe leather. So I'm just going to cut to the door. She goes, what? Right, so we cut the shoe leather. She reacts. I'll even put it in voice. And then you know how we cut the shoe leather? Boom, the door. Cut to the door. How do we want the door? We want it close up. I want the physicalness here. I want it to be her here and him here, and he's going to burst past. So that's kind of the size I want. So that means the door will be a little bit out of frame. We'll make it a double door. So here's the middle of the door. Whoops. Here's the door. Thought I'd record real time. Here's this. I think there was a lamp over there too. We'll draw the little lamp here. We'll draw the little table here. Maybe here's the door handle. Here's the design pattern thing on the doors here. And I'm gonna lighten that layer. Get rid of that old rough. And she'll come to the door. Oh, you know what? Delete that dialogue, and then what we'll do is we'll leave an empty one to represent her traveling over there. Maybe she even says coming. She reaches for the door. Her head's way too big. Good thing about Photoshop. Alright. You can do it on paper too. We used to, I did a story internship at Pixar, and we had to work on paper. And it's funny because DreamWorks did the same thing. Like during our training program, we had to work on paper. And I don't know if it's so that we can appreciate where we come from, our roots, or what. But you can, there, she's going to open the door. But you can use a Xerox machine. That's what we used to do. Use a Xerox machine. Looks like she has a mustache. I said I wouldn't erase, didn't I? She's looking too young without those lines. So she goes. I'm going to delete this door here. And then I'm going to put a tone back here. The outside into the hallway. And then I'm going to draw this dude. This is me satisfying my action scene. What's gonna happen? This is me just riffing here. She's gonna open the door. And then, what do I want to look at here? What are the opacity on this one? And him. And then, boom. I'm going to move it slightly because I want to get her in there. I'm going to have her hand. He pushes through. And then, I don't know if you notice, if you watch live action slowly, typically the camera is behind on the movement of the characters because in theory there's a cameraman that's trying to keep up with the movement of the characters. He can't predict the exact timing, so things are delayed a little bit. This is all stuff that other people have taught me. You'll probably notice it later. But so he bursts in, bursts through the door. Draw a little bit of the door here, and he would probably be blurred, so motion blur. You can set the direction, lower it. Doesn't take much. Let's see, get rid of those two. Pushes through, and we're going to keep moving the camera. And he walks past her, barrels past her, and we're going to linger on her expression here. He's moving, so I'm going to keep him blurred, and then she's going to be oh, I didn't put glasses on her, did I? I forgot to draw her glasses in the other one. It's okay. Keep moving forward. She's too big. I'm going to shade him so he pops. And I'll even do slightly lighter here. Now let's draw our glasses. Crunch? I don't know why that's crunch. We'll do a nice ease here. In other words, you ease in and ease out of your camera moves to kind of show it the camera is settling. She doesn't panic. Apparently people rush into her office a lot. She's going to just go. She's going to ask him what's up. I'm still too serious here. Clean the slate here. If you go like this and go delete hidden layers, that way keep your file sizes small. I'm going to do a two-shot here so I can see where he is in relation to her, and I'm going to have her move forward in this shot so we can cover all of our bases. She's moving, but we don't have to watch her move just for the sake of that. Yeah, let's draw the room a little bit real quick. Draw draw the desk. Here's the desk and the chairs. Here's the windows. Here's the background. Here's the floor plane. A lot of people draw the floor planes on everything they do, just to kind of make it clear. I don't do it all the time, but he's going to be in here. His heart's racing. He's not a happy camper. So we changed the scenario a little bit, just to give it a different energy, just to try something else out. Lower his arm. Figure out that gesture is a mess, but that's okay. I'm gonna have her come closer here. Where is he? She comes over, she's listening to him. I'm gonna set up the next shot. I'm already setting it up now. He's furious. He's got bangs. He's got a long nose. He's got lines on the side of his face. He can't even think straight. And he's in the wrong place. And he's probably too big. She's gonna stand here very quiet, very calmly, because she's a woman in the 1930s who's head of a school. She's very confident. I don't know, making things up. This woman's got to be something, right? Who? I'm gonna have him yell at her one more time here, and then we'll cut to her reaction. I'm gonna have his body angled at her at a certain way, because it'll make for a more interesting shot in the next. He's not gonna turn straight to her. This is all performance stuff that you just don't need to. It's just too much about. Well, you do need to stress about. I don't know why I'm saying that, but don't listen to me. Here we go. He's way too big. It's okay, I'm gonna shrink him. Shrink, 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 shrink. And I'm gonna keep her the same. My son. New shot. Delete hidden layers. Keep it small. Save. You gotta save. Don't lose all your work, because your computer crashes. She says, "What's his name?" He's pissed. I'm gonna have her holding her hands like this. She's all jolly. I'm gonna make it funnier here. Lighten it up a little bit. Crying out loud. There we go. Then we'll do the complementary angle. So she's in the foreground. She's smaller. I want him to be kind of intimidating. They're really close to each other, so he goes, what is his son's name? Did we ever determine it? I like the name Jackson. Let's use Jackson. That line's driving me crazy. He says, don't give me that. What's he mad about? This is not that funny, is it? He looks too scary for it to be funny. Let's see. No, that wasn't my phone ringing. What's he say? Don't give me that. I've seen him coming here the last few days. Let's see her reaction now that she knows what he's talking about. Oh, we didn't have him say the name. I'm going to say it right here. Jackson. I've seen him coming here the last few days. She goes, oh yes, Jackson. Fine boy. OCD here. I don't want him to be mad. He's fuming. It's fine boy. Started coming here the last few days. That's 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. I don't know why I had him. I don't know why we're so close up on him. We'll pull out after this. So, now where do we want to go with this? She said for what? Or he asked for what? So what's his answer? Let's pull out. Let's give some space. We're gonna really feel this. He's right in her face. His shoulders are tense. She's very calm. He's upset. And there's a desk somewhere around here. And chairs. And arches. Arched windows. And the floor. And the ground here. And the bookcase. For what? What's the punchline? What's the punchline? See, this is something we do in the class. We'll figure out gags here. She says, I'm his mother. Wah, wah. Anyways. Yeah, let's watch it. Huh? Those reaches. Boom! Can I help you? Where is he? Who? My son. What's his name? Don't give me that! Jackson! I've seen him coming here the last few days. Yes, Jackson, fine boy. He started coming here the last few days. For what? I'm his mother. So there you have it. That's the silly ending. Thanks for watching the workshop, and be sure to check out the masterclass which I teach called Storyboarding for Animation if you want to learn more about storyboarding. Thanks.